we sorrow, we often weep. When it's passed through the valley, we often weep. Together in sunshine, together in rain, together in victory, through His precious name. And sometimes we laugh together, sometimes we cry, sometimes we share together heartaches and smiles. Sometimes we dream together of how it will be when we all get to heaven, God's family. Our hymn of encouragement, 271. 271.
Thank you, Bill. And once again, good evening. If you open your Bibles, the book of Matthew 26, we'll begin reading there, Matthew 26. During the time that Thomas Jefferson was president, he and some friends were riding across country on horseback. They came to a bridge, and because of heavy rains, the bridge had been washed out. And so they were forced to ford the river on horseback. In doing so, of course, fighting against the strong current that was coming through the flooding river. After a couple of his friends had gone into the river and safely got across, there was a man who was standing nearby, not part of the group. They came over and he asked Jefferson if it could be, if Jefferson would take him across on his horse. Jefferson immediately said yes, helped the man up and got in the back of his horse. And they took their turn going down into the river, fording across and come back up safely on the other side. When they were helping the man down from the horse, some of Jefferson's friends asked him, why did you ask the president to take you across the river? The man was shocked. I didn't realize it was the president. He said, but this I will tell you. I was watching the group, and some of your faces said yes, and some of your faces said no. His face said yes. Now think about that. What he saw in Jefferson, just his demeanor, he was approachable. And so, not knowing he was the president, asked him for help to get across the river, and Jefferson took him across. His face said yes. Now think about Jesus. We're told about Jesus that he was referred to as a friend of tax gatherers and sinners. Matthew 19, were bringing their children to him. What did Jesus' face say? Yes or no? Did Jesus appear as a friend, or did he appear as one who was unapproachable? That being the case, then you recognize and remember that we are those who are called upon as Christians to follow in the steps of Christ in 1 Peter 1:21. So, question is then, what should our face say? And that brings us then to some questions. If we're to be friends and be approachable as was Jesus, and our face should say yes to people in need, then there are a couple of things to consider. One is a contrast, and the other is a challenge. You'll observe here in Matthew 26, the contrast, first of all, has to do with friends. Who are friends? You observe in verse 47, as Jesus there in the garden, well, he was still speaking. Behold, Judas, one of the 12, came up, accompanied by a large crowd with swords and clubs, who came from the chief priests and the elders of the people. In verse 48, he who was betraying him gave them a sign, saying, whomever I kiss, he is the one, seize him. And so when they came to Jesus, Judas in verse 49 said, "Hail, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you have come for." You observe Jesus called Judas friend. Was this sarcasm on the part of Jesus? Was it a degree of hypocrisy on the part of Jesus? Well, I understand words in the English don't always convey the subtleties of meaning in the original language. Yes, Jesus called Judas friend. But you also recognize that this is a situation where, like in verse 21 of the same chapter, Jesus told them, "One of you will betray me." In John 13, we're told there Jesus knew the one who was betraying him. And also in John 17, as Jesus is praying to the Father, he referred to Judas, the betrayer, as a son of perdition, meaning therefore he knew he was the one who was destined to perish. But he called him friend. The word here used is a comrade or a companion. But it's important to observe what it does not mean and what it does not involve. It does not involve or express affection. This word does not express affection. It's the same term our Lord used in the parable he told in the book of Matthew, chapter 20, of the landowner who had hired some men to work in his vineyard, to work there for a denarius. And during the day, he would therefore hire additional men. So at the end of the day, the men who had been hired first were rather disconcerted because they received a denarius, and everybody else who'd only worked sometimes only a short time received the same amount of money. And so they were complaining, this is not quite right. You remember that the landowners, Jesus telling the parable, the landowner said, "Friend, did we not agree to a denarius? In other words, you're getting what you agreed to accept." This disgruntled worker was referred to as friend by the landowner. The same term is used in the book of Matthew 22, when the Lord told the parable, again, regarding the kingdom of heaven, of a king who had a wedding feast for his son. And the king comes to observe all those who have accepted the invitation. And there, behold, is a man who is not wearing the wedding garment. In doing so, he was showing extreme disregard and disrespect for the king. He had not put on a wedding garment. And the king asked him, "Friend," this is right before he has the man bound hand and foot and thrown to outer darkness. He says, "Friend, how have you come here without a wedding garment?" Now, it's the same term. It does not express affection. So the same term was used of a disgruntled worker, same term was used of a disrespectful guest, and the same term was used by Jesus to Judas. No, there was no hypocrisy involved, no sarcasm involved. It was simply a term that conveyed maybe a polite greeting or a recognition of someone that he had an association with. But no affection was involved. On the other hand, you have the same English word used, the book of John, chapter 11. Well, Jesus tells the disciple, "Lazarus, our friend, is asleep." Of course, as they spell out, he's dead, he's died. But Lazarus, our friend. Now, when the sisters in verse 3 sent the message to Jesus about Lazarus' condition, the one whom you love is sick. And we're also told, of course, in verse 5, that Jesus loved Martha, her sister, and Lazarus. The term there is agapeo, to love dearly, but it's a verb. There's therefore action involved. In loving them dearly, of course, the very action involved would always to seek their best interests. It refers to Lazarus as a friend, speaking of one whom he loved. And being one whom he loved, again, the idea is one who was a close association, a dear friend, one with whom you would associate with familiarity. You imagine you have a close friend, someone you can relax with, someone you're at ease with, and you associate with them with familiarity, not as Judas, not as that grumbling worker, not as the disrespectful guest, but someone he loved. He had this closeness with. There was a bond with him, an association, a companionship, but a degree of familiarity because of their closeness. So you observe the term friend can be used in different ways. We do the same thing. Speak of friends, but there are those who are truly friends. So the same thing is true here. There are friends and there are friends. That's a contrast. But then you have a challenge. Book of 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33. There's a warning issued by the Apostle Paul. Bad company, or in the King James, evil companions, bad company corrupts good morals. It's a warning, a very clear warning. The term bad or evil is worthless. Those who are worthless in their thoughts and in their actions. And because they are worthless in their thoughts and their actions, then they become troublesome. And they even become destructive. And he speaks here of bad company or evil companions. Again, the idea being to be together with, to keep company with. So as you keep company with those who in their thoughts and actions are worthless and will only lead to problems and difficulties, bad company corrupts good morals. In a sense, being to cause something to be destroyed and turn into a worse state. If you have a barrel of apples, good apples, and you pop a bad apple in there, well, the bad apple will get better because it's in the company of good apples. No, the bad apple corrupts the good apples. And so the warning is that bad company, evil companions, those who are worthless in their thoughts and their actions, will only lead to a worsening condition of those who keep company with them. And so, therefore, there's a very clear warning to Christians to watch out of your companions. Bad company will corrupt good morals. But then, on the other hand, book of 1 Corinthians in chapter 5, where we read together tonight. In 1 Corinthians 5, in verse 9, as Paul been discussing a shameful situation within the church in Corinth. Sin is being overlooked. Sin is being indulged. Notice in verse 9, I hope you're reading with me, in verse 9, I wrote you in my letter not to associate with immoral people. But then he adds, I did not at all mean with the immoral people of this world, or with covetous, swindlers, or idolaters, for then you'd have to go out of the world. If you're going to avoid the bad people, where are you going to go? The Bible doesn't endorse the idea of a separate community for Christians. No refuge area where only Christians go. If you're going to avoid them, you have to go out of the world. So you observe, he makes a very clear requirement that Christians do not dissociate themselves or distance themselves from those of the world, including the immoral, the covetous, the swindlers, and the idolaters. So therefore, there is a freedom to associate with those who we normally consider bad company. The idea of associate is to mix up or to mingle with. So there's a freedom, there's a permission for Christians to mingle with those who are what you would call normally bad company, to keep company with. And you'll also observe in the outline that according to Vincent in his scholarly work, it denotes not only a close but habitual association. So not simply bumping into somebody now and again, not simply somebody who works on the other side of the office from you, but this association is mixing up or mingling with individuals, even on a close and even a habitual fellowship. Doesn't it seem rather strange? So you have in chapter 15 a warning, bad company corrupts good morals, and here you have in chapter 5, in the same letter, the same apostle, giving permission for Christians to associate with and mingle with, even in a close way, with those who are worldly. Of course, the force of Paul's argument comes out as he makes his application in the following verses. In verse 11, but actually I wrote to you not to associate with any so-called brother, anyone who's a Christian in name only. Don't associate with them. This so-called brother, if he is an immoral person or covetous, idolater, reviler, or drunkard, or swindler, not even to eat with such a one. So you observe this concept of mingling with. You don't do it with someone who's a Christian who is living like the world. You don't even eat with them. He goes on further in verse 12. Well, what do I have to do with judging outsiders, that is, non-Christians? Do you not judge those who are within the church? That's our responsibility. But those who are outside, God judges. Remove the wicked man from among yourselves. So the association, the mingling with, even on a habitual basis, was allowed, endorsed, for Christians to mingle with those of the world. But no such mingling with a Christian who is living like the world. There's no association with a renegade Christian. You don't eat with them. That degree, you don't even eat with them, and you remove them from among yourselves. So you observe the situation. There are friends, and there are friends. You observe there are those whom Paul warns, bad company will corrupt good morals. At the same time, the apostle endorses and approves of Christians mingling with and associating with those who are immoral, covetous, idolaters, revilers, drunkards, or swindlers. And so the question is then, for the Christian, recognizing these challenges we have, is how then does a Christian establish balance? It's about establishing balance. The point being that we may have many friends in the world, even some friends who you might regard as somewhat unsavory. We may have some friends in the world that you got to watch their language. Some friends in the world that we associate with that you don't approve of their actions, what they say and what they do, but nevertheless, we associate with them. After all, if we don't associate with people of the world, how are they ever going to learn about Christ? I'm thankful that there are those who overlook my worldliness to teach me about the Lord. So we have friends. But then you recall in the book of 3 John in verse 14, he says, the friends greet you. So we may have many friends in the world, but for Christians, the friends within the body of Christ, the friends are indeed a special and a close relationship. So the point is, we are free to associate with those who are of the world. But then in establishing balance, don't lose your identity and don't allow it to come to the point where you are being influenced rather than influencing others to the point where even your soul and your faith might be in jeopardy. So the question then always is, how then do we maintain friendship in the world without being friends of the world? And this question is one of a special importance to those who are young, to adolescents, to teenagers who are believers? Can we have friendship in the world? Can we be friends with those who are in the world without it getting to the point where our morals are corrupted, where they're making inroads into our life and inroads into our values that results in a corruption? Again, this is the question before every Christian, but it's especially important for those who are young. See, the problem is not young people having friends who are not members of a church. The question, and the main question, is a matter of attitude. The question is, as some have called it, what is the degree of psychological closeness that the Christian teenager, a young person, would have with their non-Christian friends? What's the degree of psychological closeness? How strongly do they identify with their non-Christian friends? And does it get to the point where their identity is being taken over by the identity of the group? Question is the Christian young person assertive, or are they passive? Are they leaders, or are they ones who are led? And this has tremendous significance. Studies have shown that a young person who's a believer, who's mingling with and identifying with a group that is of not believers, and if they allow themselves to be influenced rather than influence others, it is shown in virginity rates. It is shown in drug use. It is shown in the use of pornography. Morals become compromised. If the individual has a psychological closeness with those who are not members of the church, who do not share in their faith. Not the first time parents have had struggles and arguments with their young people, their adolescents, over their choice of friends. And the parents are concerned about their running with a group that's not in the church, who are not believers. More often than not, such an argument is a losing battle for the parents. For one thing, focus upon the wrong thing. They're focusing upon a symptom, the choice of worldly friends, running with the group. Young people, by very nature, want to run with the group, want to be part of a group. That's just part of young people, just part of growing up, want to be part of the group. So when they choose a group of questionable friends in the eyes of the parents, and the parents fight with them over being part, you should be part of that group, and so forth and so on, it's usually a losing battle, because it's focusing on the symptom. And the question is, what's the deeper cause? Why have they chosen that group? Does a young person from a home of believers choose a group of worldly friends or problem friends because they want to be bad? I don't believe so in most cases. But one attraction is that the group, the problem group, offers acceptance. And what they're looking for is acceptance. Maybe they offer acceptance because their their standards are pretty low, but they offer acceptance, and the young person finds acceptance with a group, even if the parents just can't stand the ones they're running with. But the problem group offers an acceptance that maybe is the root of the problem, rather than simply looking at a symptom. What is the root of the problem for the young person is seeking such a group? See, the danger is, as one has observed, that most adolescents find it almost impossible to be close friends with worldly peers without being overwhelmed by their secular standards. Here's the problem. It's one thing to say, well, they're my friends and they accept me and I can feel good and all the rest of it, but their standards are difficult for a young person to overcome. They turn for acceptance, but then find themselves overwhelmed by the worldly values and standards that they're unable to really cope with. So the importance, the tremendous importance of a church group. People sometimes, I've heard it in the past, get kind of aggravated. Well, young people, all the youth group is simply cookies and fun. Well, that's not the case. I mean, it is some places, but it's certainly not the case here. But you also understand that cookies and fun is a very important part of being together. When my daughter was, I think, either her late teens or early 20s, she and I were sitting talking one time, and it came up, reminiscing about a girl who'd been my pen pal. I was in Australia at the time. She was in Nashville, Tennessee, and we were pen pals. And so Jenny asked me, well, how did you get to have her as a pen pal? I said, well, it was through the Teenage Christian magazine. And she laughed, and she laughed. She was the funniest thing. She just laughed. I said, what are you laughing at? She says, you read Teenage Christian magazine? I said, well, back in the day, in the far distant age, lo and behold, I was a teenager. But she couldn't believe that. But I remember, I became a Christian at the age of 18, just a brand new congregation. And over a short period of time, we had probably 5 or 6 fellas, I mean the same number of girls. And we had a wonderful group. We did a lot of things together. Some of the sunrise devotionals, we went up in the hills outside of Perth, Western Australia. As the sun was coming up, we had our devotional, singing, praying together, and having a lot of fun. Other times we'd go down to the beach and have a sunset devotional, and a lot of things in between. It was good, wholesome fun. It resulted in one marriage, I think, but it was just good, wholesome fun. Good, wholesome fellowship. Young people being together. But we also worked together. And one of the other fellows, myself, began to preach, or at least attempting to. The group was so supportive. Supportive in so many different ways. And the church group is of essential importance. We're very thankful for the work being done here, and it needs our continued support. Not just financially, when we're having wanting cookies for different things and so forth, and houses being open for devotionals, but every way we can as a congregation be supportive to these young people. Yeah, other congregations have big groups and so forth, but not just the size. It's what's being founded and the relationships that are being developed, recognizing that bad company corrupts good morals. A young person can be part of a group at church, but then their friendship at school or whatever it might be becomes an even stronger pull on them. And as you observed this morning, people like Demas, people for a while, and then, boy, I'm missing out in life, and he quit Paul and off to Thessalonica. So the importance of the fellowship within the church, that it becomes a binding and a strong and a lasting fellowship that only contributes to the strengthening of their bond with Jesus Christ. This is a congregational effort. This is a congregational focus, helping young people to grow and be strong in Jesus Christ. And we can't do that. How can you develop a sense of community through all the ages without sharing together? And one of the ways in which young people can be truly encouraged, not just being by themselves, which of course is important, but also having an opportunity to talk with and meet with and fellowship and learn from those who are further down the line in life. It's a congregational focus for each other, but not to view the young people in the congregation as a separate group and they do their own thing. No, they do a lot of things by themselves, obviously, but they're part of the church. And as such, we as a congregation to be involved and encourage and support in every way that we possibly can. Research has shown, without surprise, that healthy relationships results in ethical living. When you're with individuals who encourage you to do better and to be better, and who being with them, you're not trying to be involved in things that are outside of what you should be doing, not being attracted to situations that are kind of dangerous. And fact is, some young people are attracted to dangerous friends. Some young girls are attracted to dangerous fellas because they're exciting. And that also can lead to terrible consequences. The importance of a congregation working and serving together, involving and including all, and being aware of those who are especially vulnerable to the challenges of life. Solid relationships, healthy relationships, results in ethical living. Friendship in the body of Jesus Christ is that friendship our Lord expressed regarding Lazarus and his two sisters. There's a bond, that's a verb, it's an act of friendship. And so it is in Jesus Christ. As we conclude, remember Jesus said in John 15, "You are my friends if you do what I command you." I want to be his friend, don't you? I want him to view me as a friend because I'm doing what he says. The question is, are you his friend? You're his friend only as you comply with his directions. His friend only as you do what he commands. His commands are easy. His commands are easy to carry and not burdensome. They make life worthwhile. They give life a lift. They give life purpose. Are you his friend? If not, you have an opportunity even tonight to be obedient to the gospel, being baptized into Christ, and live your life in faithful obedience to him, to be his friend to the very end of your days. And that friendship carries through until the day of eternity. Whatever your need might be, come to Christ and we stand together and sing.